Have you ever felt like Arabic syntax is just this impossible ancient hieroglyphic code meant only for scholars sitting in ivory towers? Well, in this explainer, we're going to completely shatter that illusion. Today, we're taking a totally new puzzle-solving approach to understanding the language of the Quran. We are going to dismantle those intimidating walls of Arabic grammar and show you that it's actually incredibly logical, immensely rewarding, and surprisingly simple once you have the right key. But first, let me ask you something that really cuts to the core of why we're looking into this. Do you read the Quran fluently but understand absolutely nothing? Seriously, think about it. You sit there on your prayer mat, your tajweed is totally flawless, your breath control is perfect, the pronunciation is pristine, you sound amazing. But when you stop, take a breath, and ask yourself what you actually just read, your mind just goes completely blank. Look, if that hurts to hear, take comfort in knowing you're definitely not alone. This is an incredibly common pain point for millions of people around the world. We've absolutely mastered making the right sounds, but we are completely missing the actual message. So to fix this, we've got to fundamentally change our mindset. Arabic syntax, or nahu, isn't that dry, boring, sleep-inducing school subject that we all dreaded on early weekday mornings. You've got to completely erase that image from your brain. Instead, I want you to think of Arabic grammar as your ultimate top-secret decoder ring. It isn't a burden, it's this incredibly exciting, perfectly logical process for unlocking divine messages. Once you slip this decoder ring onto your finger, the text stops being just a series of beautiful empty sounds, and it instantly transforms into a living, breathing message speaking directly to you. Section 1. The reading without understanding shock. Moving on to Section 2, sentence building, focusing on nahu and sarf. To lay a rock-solid foundation, we really need to understand the two main pillars of the Arabic language, sarf and nahwa. So think of sarf, morphology, as the art of brickmaking. It's the factory where we take raw clay, which are the root letters, and we bake them in the oven to create a perfect individual brick. We shape it into a past tense verb, a present tense verb, or a noun. But here's the catch. You can have the most beautifully baked bricks in the entire world, but if your architect is terrible, that house is going to immediately collapse right on top of your head. And that is exactly where nahu, or syntax, comes in. Nahu provides the architectural rules. It dictates exactly where every single brick goes, so your grammatical house stands tall and never falls apart. Section 3. Stubborn and flexible words. Okay, so now that we have our bricks, we need to quickly realize that they don't all behave the same way. In Arabic, words actually have distinct personalities. We categorize them into two main types, mabni and murab. Mabni words are the stubborn ones. They're fixed. Imagine your stubborn old uncle who insists on wearing the exact same heavy wool coat every single day. Literally, it doesn't matter if you're at a sizzling summer barbecue or in the middle of a freezing winter blizzard. He absolutely refuses to change his outfit. That's a mabni word. Its ending never changes, no matter where you put it in a sentence. Then, on the other hand, you have the murab words. These are the highly flexible, smart employees of the language. They constantly change their uniforms, meaning the vowel on their last letter, depending on the specific job they're doing in the sentence. If they're the doer, they wear one uniform. If they're the receiver, they wear another. 4. I want you to just let that number sink in for a second. 4. It's kind of mind-bending, honestly, and it completely changes how you look at the Arabic language, because one single Arabic block of text can easily translate into 4, sometimes even 5 complete English words. In English, everything is nicely separated and spread out on the table for you to see. But Arabic? Arabic is incredibly compressed. It's literally the ultimate zip file. When you look at what appears to be just one single word on a page, you're very often looking at an entire hidden ecosystem. A single word can seamlessly hide a verb, the subject to perform the action, and the object that received the action, all locked together in one tight embrace through attached and hidden pronouns. So you can't just count the spaces between words like you do in English. You need a really sharp eye to unzip that file and discover the hidden actors lurking right beneath the surface. Which brings us to Section 4, the secret of Arab in 3 steps. So how exactly do we unzip these files and parse these sentences without getting completely overwhelmed? Well, we use a foolproof 3-step formula that is going to be your absolute best friend from this day forward. Step 1, count the words. Remember, Arabic is tricky. You must hunt down those hidden pronouns. A verb with a hidden doer is actually 2 words, not 1. Step 2, identify the container. Is the sentence sitting in a nominal box because it starts with a noun, or a verbal box because it starts with a verb? Establishing the container tells you exactly which set of rules to use. And step 3, distribute the roles. Now that you know your container, you basically become a theater director casting a play. You assign the role of the doer to one word, the action to another, and the receiver to a third. It's a wonderfully systematic, purely logical process. Section 5. The 5 types of predicates. Let's dive briefly into the nominal container. When a sentence starts with a noun, it has a subject, the topic, and a predicate, known in Arabic as the khabar. The khabar is the breaking news. It's the crucial piece of information you've been waiting for. And this news comes in 5 distinct shapes. Sometimes the news is just one single word, like Muhammad is a doctor. Sometimes it's a prepositional phrase. The book is on the table. It could be an adverbial phrase. The house is behind the mountain. But here's where it gets super fascinating. Sometimes the news is so massive that it's an entirely complete nominal or verbal sentence nested right inside the original one. Recognizing these 5 shapes ensures you never get lost trying to find the point the sentence is trying to make. Now, I gotta give a brief nod to the absolute titans of Islamic scholarship. Legendary scholars like Ibn Hisham al-Ansari wrote massive, heavy, multi-volume encyclopedias on the intricacies of syntax, detailing every minor grammatical debate between classical schools of thought. We owe our entire understanding of the language to the breathtaking genius of these giants, and we hold their work in the highest reverence. However, the fantastic news for you today is that you do not need to read a 10-volume grammatical encyclopedia to start understanding the Quran. Our 3-step formula is the distilled, highly practical essence of their work, specifically designed to get you parsing sentences immediately. Section 6, a practical application from the Quran. It's time to put our new superpowers to the test on an actual, deeply powerful verse from the Quran. In Surah Al-Zalzala, we read the majestic words, يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا, meaning, on that day, it will report its news. Let's use our decoder ring, our 3-step parsing method, and just watch the grammar beautifully reveal the meaning. So we start with step 1, counting the words. We see the verb tuhaddithu, meaning it will report. But wait, where's the doer? Who is doing the reporting? Well, through the context of the surah, we know it's the earth. So the doer is actually a hidden pronoun meaning she, referring to the earth, tucked neatly away inside the verb. Then we have akhbaraha, its news, which is actually 2 words locked together. Step 2, identify the container. The core of this phrase begins with the verb tuhaddithu, so we are officially operating inside a verbal sentence container. And step 3, distribute the roles. We have the action, which is reporting. We have the doer, which is the hidden she, the earth. And who or what is receiving the action of being reported? The news. Therefore, akhbaraha is the object receiving the action. Look at how incredibly satisfying it is to solve that puzzle, locking every single architectural brick firmly into its rightful place. But now, brace yourselves. What if we changed just one single vowel? What if, while reciting, your tongue slipped and you accidentally swapped a tiny A sound for a tiny U sound at the end of a word? Is it just a minor reading mistake that we can easily brush off? The reality is that this one tiny change is a matter of absolute critical importance, and it explains exactly why Arabic syntax is fundamentally tied to Islamic theology. When you change a word's ending from a fatha, an a sound, to a dhamma, a u sound, you are completely changing the uniform that word is wearing. You are taking a word that was the object, the receiver of the action, and instantly turning it into the subject, the one doing the action. In certain verses of the Quran, changing this one microscopic vowel can literally reverse the doer and the receiver. It can inadvertently make the creator, or completely flip the reality of who is punishing and who is being punished. It turns theology entirely upside down. This is exactly why classical scholars were so incredibly strict about syntax. Grammar isn't just academic trivia. It is the ultimate theological safety valve that protects the pristine meaning of the text. So are you ready to stop guessing and start truly understanding the ultimate message? We've seen today that syntax isn't some terrifying monster hiding in the textbook. It's a brilliant logical toolbox. Take these tools, use the 3 steps, build your grammatical house on solid foundations, and you will forever transform the way you interact with the most important text in the world. It's time to stop just making sounds and start unlocking the meaning.